So good morning, everyone. My name is Ross Carlson. I'm a consultant here with Addins, and we are going to be recording a webinar today. And afterward, there will be a Q&A session at the end, I promise. This is really expected to not take the full allocated hour. However, knowing that, I'll do my best to provide as much content as I possibly can. So if you'll allow me to go through the agenda, and when we get to the end, then I'll unmute the lines and do the best I can to answer. As Jennifer mentioned, this link will be available, so you'll be able to review this recorded webinar after today, for those of you that may not have been able to connect on the internet. Okay, so for those of you who can see the screen, I have an agenda on a little notepad here on the top left. I am doing everything in my power to avoid the PowerPoint application, so that's why I have an untitled notepad here. So what I have in the background is the Dynamics GP application, the latest version, which is 2010. Going through the agenda, the first thing I'll do is introduce collections management, the module, and just kind of give a brief overview, useful to you, and how you might be able to use it. Next, I'm just going to jump into some short demos, just a few quick and easy things so you can see how it works. I thought that might be helpful before digging into the details, which we'll review the setup options, configuration. We'll look at customer records and what data we can track in the module in addition to the core GP sales module for customers. And then we'll review some of the daily procedures, documents and letters that are available, some of the inquiries that are available in the module, and lastly, I won't bore you with the functions, which is the coding that you can assign to the mail merge letters, but I'll show you where you can get to that data. And then we'll have a Q&A session afterward, as promised. Okay, collections management. Basically, you can use collections to create a list of customers that meet specific user-defined criteria. And for example, you can run a query on Monday and generate a list of customers that have an overdue balance on that day, and then run the same query on Tuesday, and customers who've made a payment will be removed from that list, and customers with newly overdue payments will be added to the list. You can also create customer notes and tasks. You can mark these tasks as completed or paid. You can print a task list, and you can use the tasks list to locate customer contact information. You can track additional customer information, create action IDs to track activity. You can transfer customer accounts to other credit managers. You can enter new customer notes, add descriptions to predefined letters. You can create brand new collection letters, and you can send letters to customers. You can even calculate the average sales per day on an inquiry window. Two of the most compelling overview reasons I find for making use of the collections module is that all your information is in one place. And the next compelling reason is it's really an easy way to reprint invoices from the system. Okay, so that's our introduction. Now I'm going to jump into just three real short demos to show you just briefly how you can use collections management. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is, this is GP 2010 we're looking at. I'm on the sales area page, which is where the collections module sits. So if you have collections installed, what you'll find is a subsection under each of the sections of the area page where collections is located. So underneath the transactions section, you'll find these four links that take you to collections transaction activity. On the cards, you'll find four locations here, so you can set up information for collections. There's one section for reports. There are two inquiry windows that we'll take a look at. And lastly, you find some setup information, which is all related to collections. So that'll show up if it's installed on your client under the sales area page, which is where we are. I'm going to go ahead and open up this smart list. And today I am going to find all my customers that are over their credit limit, and I'm just going to send them a letter. So I'm going to do that by opening Smart List. I'm going to go to the Sales section, expand Customers, and there's a predefined Customers over Credit Limit that Microsoft has created and packaged in the application. So you find here 7 customers that are over their credit limit. I'm going to go up to the Word button and choose the first item, Prepare a Collection Letter. And there are a few predefined ones. I'm going to select the Final Notice and click Next. And it gives me an opportunity to unselect some of these customers if I don't want the entire list to go out there. However, I could have modified my Smart List view at the same time. I click Next, and I have an opportunity to enter some of the information about me that if the letter I'm sending has data about me on the signature line, for example, this is where I could edit that before I create the letters. Now all I have to do is click Finish. The letters are prepared, being prepared. Here they are in a single document, and this is what they look like. So basically this was a mail merge function that came straight from Smart List. I just wanted to show you how simple it was to create that based on my list of customers. Okay. I'm not going to save those. Close my Smart List, and now I'm going to send a collection notice from a query. So I'm going to go into my Build Query window for collections and pull up my 181 plus overdue customers, and you'll see I've just selected the B's in my range. I'm going to run this query. Just wants to know if I want to replace the query I already have. It gives me the results. There are 4 customers in this query. It plugs it into my main window. So I'm going to close this in my query window, and I'm going to go straight to the Query Letters section. And you can see the query I'm currently working on is listed up here, and the number of customers is 4. So I'm going to generate this letter just for one of my customers, Blue Yonder, by removing the others from this list. Now you can see I only have 1 customer. I'm going to print the letter here, which is going to be my first notice. And I'm going to print invoices. The invoices I'm going to print are just those that are overdue. And now I'm going to go ahead and generate this. I'm going to send this to email. The email will go out to this customer. The way I have this configured, I don't have Adobe PDF Writer installed, but if I did, the invoice and the collection information would be generated as an attachment in PDF format. Instead, I chose HTML. And if I go to my mailbox, you'll see the letters that I got from this customer. The first one is the collection letter. If I open that up, this looks familiar. This is from a mail merge function, and just the way it's configured, it tells me what the past due balance is, and then lists those items down here with their invoice numbers. The next email that came was just a status to indicate to me that this was successfully generated to my customer. And my customer, interestingly enough, has the same email address as I do for the purposes of this demo. And then here's the actual invoice that was regenerated in an HTML format. So you can see invoice 1019 for $1,300. So this is for the customer's information. going to delete those. So this is my first collection notice that I sent out. Next thing I'm going to do is just send a quick email to one of my customers. So I'm going to go back to my collection main. I'm going to choose a new query. This one's going to show me anybody that's overdue by 60 plus days. I'm going to run this query and replace the data that's in there. Found 9 customers. First one is Aaron Fitz. If I do a lookup, I can see the balance that's overdue and the total due, which would just be the balance overdue plus the current amount. I'm going to sort these by balance overdue, and you'll see Alta Manufacturing owes me a lot of money. So I'm going to send them a quick email. I'm going to choose the standard collection letter that I created earlier today. I'll expand the window so you can see what's happening. With my email address so we can see the results. So you can see here's some of the functions I was talking about earlier on the agenda. This is what's programmed in the letter. So I click the substitute button and the data is instantly replaced. And all I have to do now is click send and the message is already sent. And so I just sent the note to Alta Manufacturing. If I go to my email, I can see my box. I'm going to refresh that data. There's my email, and here we go. Alta Manufacturing, you owe me $69,000, and here are the 3 invoices that are overdue. Okay, so that was my quick demo of some of the things you can do in collections management. Now, what I want to do is tell you a little bit about what's new in the GP 2010 version, which is the one we're looking at now, versus the GP 10 version. So what's new, there are 3 items. First is that you can view unposted cash amounts now. The total of the unposted cash and unposted other cash amounts are now displayed in that collection main window. And I have a hyperlink to expand that view so that I can look at all those records that are in the state of work that are unposted. These amounts are displayed in the functional currency, but I can always drill back and look at the originating. The next new item in GP 2010 is that you can receive collection reminders on your home page. If I go to my home page here, you'll see I get a little reminders area, and I have the ability to add that to my list now. I didn't have that in GP 10. The icon will display the number of collection tasks that are due and allow me to open a list of tasks so I can see the details or process them. The third new item in GP 2010 is I can print collection letters by address ID. So when I set up a collection letter, such as the ones that I sent earlier through the mail merge function with Word, I can choose to have letters sent out based on invoices that are sent to a specific address ID. So rather than them having to go to the main address ID that's set up on the customer window, I can have letters that are sent out with their respective invoices to each of the address IDs. So those are three new items that are in GP 2010. Next I want to drill into the setup options for collections and walk through how you might set up this module. So I'm going to go to the Sales navigation pane and go to the Setup section, and I'm going to go straight to Collection Setup. In Collection Setup, depending on whether or not I'm using the Sales Order Processing module or the Invoicing module, I select this option. This is what's going to enable the link to reprint invoices from one module or the other. So we'll want to make sure you select the right module based on what you're using. We have 2 note options, which I've enabled. All this means is when I create collection notes, the module is automatically going to track any revisions to the note, and it's going to write the amounts, dates, and the invoice numbers for any invoices that I associate with a given note. Here I get a message box indicating if I need to age because of the data in the query may not have been aged as of the last however many days I specify here. And this is where I choose to use reminder levels. Reminder levels are basically charges that I can associate to a given task. So if I send out a reminder letter to a customer, I can have a $5 fee, and then maybe the second reminder letter has a $10 fee. And I can have as many reminder levels and fees as I want to, and they will create finance charge transactions if I select that option also. Here's where I choose my default overdue period, which I can change at the time I run queries or generate my letters. And this is what I mentioned in the email that we saw. It was not a PDF file, it was an HTML file. And this is the place where you select that email format. And it's often overlooked because it's not a default. This is the actual format that will be used when you generate your letters and email attachments. So if you find that you're generating collection letters and they're coming up in text form or something odd, this is where you would make that change. My reply to address I can have unique per collector, and we'll show that when we go through the collector setup information. And here's some additional data entry fields that I can add to my customer data. So if I want to do any tracking related to my customer records or do any queries that are based on unique user-defined data, this is where I would enter that data to be selected on my customer records. Let's see, information is entered in the list, which are these first two fields, and the date fields can be used for the queries in collection management. Okay, so that's it for the setup options. I'm going to click OK here. And we'll look at the collection local setup. This must be done at a workstation level, or you're going to get errors. So if you find that you have errors that a printer hasn't been set up, that's the most common one, you need to go to this setup window on the local workstation on the client. And all you have to do is select a fax printer and choose default formats, and you can choose default statement ID, which you can change when you generate the letters too. But the trick here is to open the window, make sure that a printer is selected. It doesn't have to be a fax printer. Make sure one's selected, and then click OK. And then that writes a little line to the dex.ini file, and you won't get that setup message anymore when you run your queries. Okay, so now we're going to look at collectors. This is where you can set up GP users as collectors. I had set myself up here and associated the Ross collector ID with the GP collector ID. When you do that, that enables the environment settings here below, which would allow the collections main window to automatically open when you log into Great Plains in the morning, and for the tasks and the queries to open up automatically. So these are the windows you'll primarily work with in this module, and this is a way to have those windows open automatically. Also, under the position name and email address, these are the things that I can pull from when I build my letters and statements that go to customers, email, printing, or fax. I can choose functions that grab data from here, maybe in a signature line. If you have a signature ID set up here, and I'm going to assign that here, but I'll show you how we set that up. Okay, so that's how we set up collectors. Collector signatures, the one we just selected. I think I have one set up here, which is standard. I just type in my name, my title, and my company. But this is where I can add phone number, email address, whatever I like. And then when I build my collection letters, I can choose my collector signature to show up, and the mail merge will automatically pull that for me and any other collector that runs that particular template. This is where I set up the signatures. Now I'm going to go into security, and I'm going to choose my user ID. And you'll see here I have the ability to allow users to edit and or delete notes that other users have created, or edit and delete their own notes that they've created. And the notes that others have created, that's just the last person that saved that note. If I primarily deal with a range of customers from A to M, for example, then I could put that customer range in here, and I would only have the ability to query and inquire and generate information for the customers that are within my range. So it's a bit of a misnomer where it says view notes only. It's really only going to allow me to transact and view data for customers that are in whichever range I specify in this area. So this is how I can parse out my collectors to a given range of customers. Okay, that's it for security. If I get down to the collection levels, this is what I mentioned earlier. If I'm using reminder levels, this is where I can type in a new name for the reminder level and add a fee. There's $10, $15, so that when I generate a letter, I can associate a reminder level to that particular letter and have a finance charge transaction automatically generated for the for that task. So the idea is that you're charging for some of the activity that you're engaged in with that customer. Not required, but you can have as many reminder levels as you like and whatever fees you like. Okay, so that concludes the setup section. That's everything related to setup for the module. Now we're going to look at the customer data. And I'm going to do that by going into the cards section and look at the collection info. So from here, I can pull the customer up. You can see what data is available. Basically, this is just allowing me to select an address ID specific to this customer and allow me to edit or change any of the user-defined data on these first three available to me. So that and then I also have access if this customer was part of a national account, in other words, a parent-child relationship. Right? You see that here in control, but this is just a core national account symbol. So this is how I get the customer data specific to collections. You'll notice here control cycle. The credit control cycle is just a way for me to group customers so that I can query on maybe my weekly credit cycle customers or my monthly credit cycle customers. There's really no functionality behind this selection. It's just a way for me to group and query on customers that have the same cycle assignments. Okay, collection actions. I've created 3, and what these are identifiers that you associate to a particular note, so that when I enter notes to a customer record based on some invoice, I can assign it to maybe a promise to pay. And then I can say follow up in 7 days. And then in 7 days, that promise to pay will show up on my collection task list and remind me that this guy promised he was going to pay. So it's a way to identify notes and activities as I create them. I'm going to create a new one here so you can see how it's made and call it special. Special action. And I have the ability to categorize these action types as well. I'll give it a special. And then follow-up action days, this is just a default because I can change it with every action assignment. And then automatically mark as completed. This is something that you might use if your action ID was sent a letter. So that when I send a letter, it'll automatically assign that action and mark it as completed. So I don't have to physically go in there and check that completed box. I wouldn't want to do that with a promise to pay because if my customer didn't pay, even though he promised, I wouldn't want the system to automatically mark it as completed because then I wouldn't be able to go back and query on those actions. We'll save that new action ID, close it. Let's see. I wanted to show you on the home page here for the reminders. if I go into the reminder preferences, this is what's new that I mentioned earlier about GP 2010. There's a collections task due option that I can enable, which just puts that section here on the home page. And if I display it as a queue, that means it'll show me the count of how many tasks I have due. And I can have a reminder set to the number of days. So this is a new section that's up there. If I have actions that result in tasks, they'll automatically show up on my home page. Okay, based on the action types that we saw, I'm going to pull that up real quick. When we're looking at an inquiry window, you'll find the first letter here displayed to show which action type it is, because the window's kind of busy. You'll see a D for dispute, a P for promise to pay, S for special, and if the promise to pay is actually past due or past its action days, you'll see the letter B is in bury on the inquiry window. Let's see. Okay, so lastly, under the card section, we have the transfer credit manager, which is related to customers. This is the only place where I can mass assign customers to a credit manager or transfer customers from one credit manager to another. So from here, I could choose my current query, and it shows me the results of that, and assign everybody on that query to a particular credit manager. Or I can transfer everybody that's assigned to me to someone else. So this is the only place I can kind of mass assign or transfer customers. Okay, that's all I have for the customer section with the setup. Now I'm going to go into the daily procedures for collections. And if you're familiar with collections, you're familiar with this window, collection main. This is really where everything is accessed in this module. So if you have this window open, you can get everywhere else. This is where you do most of your work. You can use this window to create notes. You can view financial information. You can print letters and statements and invoices. Send them by email, which you saw me do earlier. Right now, it's going to show me all customers if I do a lookup. Or based on the query that I ran, and if there are 10 of us that are using this module, the query is specific to user. So whichever query I last ran is going to be the one that's displayed here. And I can change that by clicking the query button. So now when I do a lookup, I only see those that are a result of the query I ran earlier today. Okay, this is the 60-plus query. Let me make sure that this is current. I drill back on the query and click this little information icon. And it tells me that it was last run about 15 minutes ago. So that's good enough for me. I don't need to rerun it. I have that query selected, and I'm going to select the first customer in that list, which is Aaron Fitz. And from here, this is where I can do some inquiry on this customer. So if I go down to his overdue balance, 181 days and over, and click the display hyperlink, this is the information window that I mentioned earlier. These are all the invoices. I have current amounts due. And I can scroll through them, and when we add notes, you'll see that there'll be a note icon down here, or an action ID. This is where that first letter will be displayed underneath the A section here, if we assign an invoice to a given action. This is only showing me the open balances. This is the $20,000 that's open. If I click the Show Fully Applied, I get to see everything. So I can go down here to one that's been applied, drill back on the current amount, and I can see the payment that was applied. I can drill back on that payment and see the details to it. I can even look at the GL distributions. So you can see from this window I have full drill back functionality, as well as I can print any of those windows that I had open to keep the data. This is a new field I mentioned earlier, unposted cash. This is new in GP 2010. It'll allow me to see those amounts. You can see they're all in the work tables. They haven't been posted yet. So this will give me an opportunity to find out before I enter my note or make my phone call that there is something that had been received from this client. Okay, from this list, like the billed letter list we saw earlier, I can do a lookup, and if there's one of these customers, this is such a small overdue balance, $300, I could delete him from this list. Same with this guy. And now when I click OK, my list is smaller that I am working with from this query. So that's how I can manage those. Let me get back to Aaron Fitz, and I want to add a new note here because I made a phone call to him, and he promised, Bob Fitz promised to pay in the next 5 days. So I'm going to hold him to it. I'm going to click a new note up here. I'm going to assign an action ID of promise to pay, and you'll see that the default date was based on a number of days, but I can change that for when to follow up. Next Wednesday is fine. And I don't have to select invoices, but I'm going to because he told me he was going to pay these 2 invoices right here. So I select those 2 invoices, and you'll notice based on our setup earlier on, we chose to have the invoice data displayed. And that's why it came in here automatically. So I'm going to add my note here. Bob promised me he would send payment by next Wednesday. Okay, so there's my note. And I go ahead and click Save. And you can just see just the first line or so of the note gets displayed. But I can expand these rows and show more detail if I want to. If I need to go back and look at the details or edit the note, this is how I would do it. I would drill back and I get a new revision number, and I can drill back and find out the revision that was actually made. So this is how I enter and create notes that are related to these phone conversations. When I'm finished, I would mark this note as completed, and then I can have the option to only display notes that have not been completed so that I don't have too many things to look at. Okay, so now we're going to look at the tasks. If I click the tasks button up here from the main, this is where I can show my uncompleted notes based on this particular date range. Remember, we gave them till next Wednesday, so I'm going to do that. And then redisplay, and you'll notice here's my note. So this is the task list that is linked to the area page, the home page, if I enable the collection tasks on my setup for the main GP. And from here I can do quite a few things, including print this list. I can query by date range or even by action ID and mark items completed from this window. Okay. I can choose Mark Paid to mark notes as completed automatically if the invoices assigned to the notes have been paid. And the action ID attached to the notes is marked Promise to Pay in the Collections Management Action Maintenance window. If I choose to mark paid, it is going to mark all notes for all collectors. So it's not just going to look at the notes on this customer within this range that are created by me. So if other people have added notes, it's going to mark those as completed also. So I want to be careful about choosing the mark paid option. Okay. Now I'm going to show you a utility that will most likely not be used, but just know that it's available. And it's called Collections Purge. And what this does is it simply purges notes. That's it. It won't purge any data or customer setup information. It'll only purge note data. So what I can do is choose, last year's notes, or if I had moved all of my customers to another collector, I can remove notes that were assigned to that collector. Or if I change to action IDs, I can do that here. And then what I can do is uncheck the remove only completed notes, and that'll remove all notes that are set up. And when I hit purge, that's what's going to actually remove these notes. And I get a message saying it won't be undone. So when I purge the notes, that's how I get rid of them. If you remember, I'm going to go back to the collections main. That's my first customer. This data in here, that's all that would be purged from that utility. If you don't, you got to be careful with that, because if you don't specify any information to remove, in other words, if I just open up this window and I click purge, it will literally remove all notes, not just those within a particular date, because I haven't added any criterion. Okay, build query, we briefly looked at. I'm going to go straight to the build query window, which again I can get to from the collections main. And this is where I create a list of customers that meet the criteria, including user-defined criteria. And the collection results get saved specific to each collector ID, so that you can run your own queries and generate your own lists. So from this query ID, I'm going to just create a new one here. What do I have? 181.60 and 91. Here I'm going to create a query ID called current balance only customers. And as I tab through the sections, you can see this is what's changing on the top area. I'm going to go to period date, and for my aging periods, I'm just going to choose insert, so I get current data only. But you can see from notes, I can choose those that were assigned to a particular collection manager, have a particular priority, or within a date range. And remember the actions, I can choose just those that are promised to pay. And these are the reminder levels. If I was using them, this would be enabled, and I can choose that I want a query based on reminder level 1, or reminder level 2, or something like that. So down here I have the ability to consolidate national activity as well. I can save this query, and then if I pull it back up, this is how I run it. Remember, I already have the the 60 plus query run, so I have that data in the system. Now I'm going to click replace, and it gives me some quick stats here. It says I have 23 customers with the balance, and it shows me what the total balance is and what the overdue balance is for those customers. And then it automatically populates the main window for me. Okay, let's look at the days sales outstanding inquiry window. So I go down to my inquiry section, and I click on the days sales outstanding. And from this window, I can calculate the DSO for a given date range, and then I can store it. So what I do is select the number of days that are going to be used based on the calculation, and the transactions within that date range. Here we're looking at today's date minus 360 days. And I click calculate, and I get the information displayed in this section here. Once I have that information, I click add to log, and I get a timestamp of today's date with my parameters and the total data. So this gives me the ability to track the DSO calculations that I make on a regular basis. Just briefly, the sales for period is the sum of the original document amount for all the debit documents, such as invoice, debit memo, service document types, minus the sum of the original document amount for credit memos and return document types. The average sales per day is the sum of the sales per period amount divided by the number of days. The sales outstanding is the sum of the current amount for each customer, so the unsettled amounts. And the day sales outstanding is the calculation of the sales outstanding amount divided by the average sales per day. That's the math for those. Now we're going to look at collection letters. If I click on the, where we want to go, card sales collection letters right here. And this is where I can create my letter IDs, and you'll find a whole bunch of them that are predefined for you. Basically, CN stands for collection. And then this is letters 1 through 10 that are specific to address ID. So as I mentioned in GP 2010, you can now have letters generated per address ID assigned to the customer. So if you're going to use that feature, you have to select one of these that has address ID in the name. Those down here that don't have address ID will not be specific to the address ID. The mail merge and the ones that I've created down here at the bottom are used for multiple customers. So if I create a query that has more than one customer in it and I want to generate reminder letters, then I have to choose one of these mail merge letters so that it can accommodate more than one customer. There are 25 of these standard letters that are included. File format determines the format of the attachment for the email messages in the collections management setup window. Now, if you remember, that was on the our setup window right in the middle. I keep going back to this because this really tricked me up right here where it says HTML. Make sure you have, if you have Adobe PDF selected, you can, but you have to have the Adobe PDF Writer installed locally on the machine, or you'll get an error indicating that it's not installed. Okay, let me pull one up here so you can see. One that we went through was this standard. I can't expand that window, but basically it's not a Word document, and these are the functions that I can choose from. Customer info, collector info, invoice data, age data. And whatever I select here shows me the functions available within that realm of data. And then I pick whatever it is I want, and I click Insert. And that's how I build this letter. So I typed in, this is a friendly reminder, and then I inserted total balance. And then as I scroll down, I said, here are my details, and I said, overdue invoice detail, and that's what allows them to be listed on the email that gets generated from this letter. Okay, so that's what the that standard letter looks like. If I go into one of these others, such as I don't know, second notice, and I drill back, it's going to open up Word for me, and you'll see this is the mail merge. So here are the fields that I added into this letter as I built it. So all these things between the carets will be filled in with the customer-specific data. If I go to my add-ins in Word, this is where I get my customer info, where I can insert these values. So I can build my own letter or edit one of the letters that is predefined for me. I'm going to close that. And I also have a default action ID to assign. You'll notice that there's the sent letter action ID that I had created earlier with no action type, and I did mark it as automatically mark as completed, so that when I generate this notice second letter to my customers, an action ID will be assigned to an item in collections that indicates today's date and the letter was sent, and it'll mark it as completed, so that I have a record of me generating this letter to my customer. Okay, now I'm going to look at the, let's see, let's look at the collections main window one more time. Looking at my first customer. There's a print button that will allow me to generate a cover letter and print a statement or an invoice, and I can even choose which invoices will be generated when I email it, fax it, or just print it. There are three sections: cover letter, print statement, and print invoices. So when I generate this email, fax, or print the documents, I will have potentially three different emails or three different. All of the invoices will be combined on a single document or email. But if I choose cover letter and invoices, I'll get two emails like we saw in my demo earlier on today. Look at the email button on the collections main. Click up here. Here I can actually choose the letter ID. This is the one that I showed you earlier. That was the standard letter. and you'll notice the functions down here, and I click substitute, and that fills the data. So it's basically building my for me. And from here, I can attach invoices, and I can email this, and I can even create an action at the same time. So I can create a sent letter action, which is a default, and mark it completed. Okay, now let's look at the collection reports. There are only a couple in here, but the most interesting one that I found is the aging amounts with notes. So from here, I've already got an option created. And basically, I can run this report on the query that I have selected, and I can make it detailed or not detailed, and include different action types, and I can put in a range. I'm going to send this to the screen just so you can see what it looks like. But the idea is it's an aging report that includes notes for this customer. So if you remember, Bob promised me he would send a payment by next Wednesday. So I get to see the aging amounts here. I can print this out, and I can quickly see, oh, I don't have any activity here for Adam Park, so I need to make some contact here. So this is a real good report to help you manage the contact and notes that you're creating at a customer level. Okay, the last thing I wanted to show you is what's called the display link, and that's what I had shown you up here earlier where it says display, the hyperlink. This is where I can see P stands for promise to pay. The I indicates that there is a note associated with this line. I can expand the rows, and I can actually see the first part of the note. Bob promised he would pay. Remember, that note was associated with these two items. I can drill back and edit that note or make whatever changes I need to, and drill back to the documents as well. Okay, boy, that was 50 minutes of straight talking. Hopefully that was good information and what you were expecting. That is really everything that I have to show on the collections module. So what I'd like to do is open up the phone and see if anyone has some questions and see if I can answer them. So I'm going to try to unmute.
Unmuted.
Okay, the phone line is open. Does anyone have a question?
Ross, I have a question on the collections purge notes items. Was that purging per collector, or is it only by the range that you choose?
It's a good question. It's a purge that is system-wide. So let me open up that window. Show you. You can do it by collector if you choose to. You would just choose collector here in your range, and then choose purge notes, and it would purge them. If you don't choose a collector up there, we'll purge everything, and it is system-wide.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, so next question.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.